All right, thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to have everybody here. This is the first Genvid Advisory Board Roundtable. Tonight we're going to be talking about the future of gaming, cloud streaming, online video games, and the metaverse. We've been taking in people's questions from Twitter, and so we'll be asking a mix of our own questions for the advisory panel and questions that we received from the audience. Everybody will start with a round of introductions. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jacob Navok, and I am CEO at Genvid Technologies. And why don't we start with Yoichi Wada and let him introduce himself.
皆さん、こんにちは。元スクエアエニックスの社長をやってました和田と言います。私はアーケードゲームから、ゲームコンソール、PC、スマートフォン、全部のゲームを事業として行ってきました。また、新しい試みも常にやってまして、クラウドゲームの会社ももちろんのこと、メタバースを作ろうとしたこともありますし、それからまたシリアスゲームの会社も作ってました。それぞれ成功したか失敗したか別として、いろんなことを試してみましたんで、私の言ってることは全部机上の空論ではなくてですね、全部非常に痛い傷を負いながらの話でございます。今日はよろしくお願いします。
So I will translate for Wada-san. He introduced himself as Yoichi Wada, the former CEO of Square Enix. He's experienced a myriad of game platforms, from console, arcade, smartphone, PC, and as well as all different kinds of businesses, including cloud gaming, serious gaming, and in many ways he's over his career tried to create the metaverse. And so what he'll be talking about today isn't just figments of his imagination, but a product of a lot of the war scars that he's culminated over the years. And look forward to the discussion going forward.
Thank you very much, Wada-san. Next up, would love for Anna to introduce herself.
Sure. So I'm Anna Sweet. I spent several years leading business and product at Valve for Steam, which was really fun time. I was there from very, very early. And so I got to see the shift from physical distribution to digital distribution, as well as the growth of the Steam platform and all the changes to gaming that came along with it. The last thing I did at Valve was I helped ship the HTC Vive and then went on to Oculus to ship the first generation of content for the Rift. Which was another really interesting and exciting shift in how we think about games and platforms. I now work at a game startup, so I'm closer to game development than I've ever been, and I advise a number of venture companies on investing in gaming.
Thank you very much, much appreciated. We'll move down in the list that I have here in the gallery with JT. Would love for JT to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is JT Gleason. I worked at Twitch for 8 years, and everything from a software engineer to the director of the growth of the platform, and all the way up to the head of our developer relations effort. Worked on all of the technologies that Twitch had in dealing with interactive live streaming and pushing that future forward. And so happy to be here to have this discussion with y'all.
Thank you so much, JT. And then last but not least, Matthew Ball.
I'm Matthew Ball. I'm a venture investor. I also spend a great deal of my time advising startups and advising corporations, predominantly in the media and interactive space. I'm also moments away from breaking out into laughter because the entire 10 minutes prior to this call was basically dunk on me video chat on Zoom. But I'm really happy to be here and excited to talk about the topic.
I mean, I was going to introduce you by saying last and definitely least Matthew Ball, but I stopped myself. But since you opened up that path, I did so. We'll let Chris also introduce himself since he's joining to help us with the Wada-san translation.
Sure, I'm Chris Cataldi, CEO, co-founder of Genvid. I've worked with Wada-san and Jacob in the past. And since my opinions are mostly outspoken, today I'll be mostly participating as Wada-san's translation as opposed to anything else.
Thank you. So we're going to start with a series of questions that we agreed upon internally before opening it up to the questions that we got from Twitter. The first one that we have for the panel is the following. Last year, we saw the quote-unquote promise of cloud gaming break open with the announcement of Stadia and xCloud, but it doesn't look like it's moving the needle much in 2020. Yesterday, we saw that Stadia was going to make its Stadia Pro feature set available for free for the next 2 months. anybody with a Gmail address. Do we think that this is going to change or improve the situation? Why? And to start, we'll throw this over to Wada-san, who worked with me for many years on cloud gaming and has pretty strong insight.
はい、ゲームコンソールや PC でできることをクラウドに持ってっても何も価値ないんですね。5G がどんなに普及したとして、どんなにストレスがなくなったとしても、ゲームコンソールや PC でできることを持ってっても誰も何も喜ばないです。
So just simply taking the feature set of PC or console from local, putting it on a server and streaming that is not going to really make much of a difference or add any value. It doesn't matter how prevalent 5G comes and solves bandwidth issues. Just moving that feature set over to the cloud really won't make much of a contribution.
で、最初の GDC の時はですね、SNS を使ってゲームにジャンプインするとか、いくつか紹介したんですけれども、E3 の時以降何にも新しいことを言ってないんですね。で、ましてや AAA タイトルをポーティングするとかですね、どんどん馬鹿げた方向に行ってるので、ちょっと期待できないですよね。
And so at GDC, they did seem to preview some new and innovative features, like being able to jump directly into a game from a viewer perspective and other features. But since then, we've not really seen much new that rocks the boat much. And when it comes to their catalog, including the lack of any serious announcements or too many announcements about AAA porting, it doesn't look like we can expect too much at this time from them.
まあ、クラウドゲームの特色っていうのは、クラウドの中で完全にユーザー同士で空間を共有できるところが肝です。つまりクライアントごとでできている空間を同期を取るんではなくて、クラウドの中で完全に一つの世界を共有するっていうところが価値ですから、そこにフィーチャーしたゲームのデザイン、サービスのデザインが出てこない限り、なかなかブレイクスルーにはならないと思います。
One of the things we need to be really aware of is the unique ability of cloud gaming is for individual users to come together in a online environment. And what I mean by this is the following. Instead of the current paradigm where each person has their own local client and where they are situated is founded in that client, and the server is just taking the synchronization of those from client to client, cloud offers the opportunity for both to be in the same actual virtual client, and there are new features that can, or new experiences that come from that. Until we get that kind of unique cloud feature set, we're not going to really break through.
あまり長く言っても Google の悪口ばっかりになっちゃうんで、私はこれぐらいにしておきます。
I have no intention of continuing to just talk about this one and make it look like I'm speaking ill of Google, so I'll stop here for now.
So I noticed you nodding a bit, JT, and so I want to toss this ball over to you and get your impressions on that same question about where cloud gaming is going and not going.
Yeah, I think for me, like if you look at what are the physical benefits of a system that is rendering something locally versus something that can be rendered globally. Locally, you have the very fast responsive time just due to the general light cone that you happen to be in. So things that need to be like, you know, super precise kind of need to live there. But what you have inside of the cloud, in the cloud gaming, is basically unlimited computational resources. So when we see a game that requires like that entire space being like rendered and the interactions between them being rendered in a way that couldn't be represented locally by, you know, one CPU or, you know, a chunk of CPUs that we put together and decided to call one CPU for this cycle, I think that's really where you'll see the next level of game comes out. So like, for example, I always go back to like the zone instances problem that all MMOs have. You get into a zone, too many people get into a zone falls over, nobody can play together. That limits the types of cities that you can actually have inside of an MMO. But if you were rendering inside of the cloud, everybody could be living and existing inside of that one same city. And that's due entirely to the computational resources that are out there that you can kind of stream into your device. And once game developers really start to utilize that, that's where I think like you'll see like, oh, I have to have that device because that that's an experience I can't create locally.
Completely agree. And one of the things that we've seen problematic for cloud gaming today is that the business model and the content publishing rights are incredibly complicated. And Anna, when you were at Valve and working on Steam, you experienced a lot of that. I remember some of our discussions as Steam started supporting subscriptions and what that was going to be like for support for Final Fantasy XIV back in the day when we were negotiating that with you. What do you think some of the challenges are for these platforms working on business models, dealing with publishers, and trying to figure out where to go next with content?
Yeah, I really think that the platform shouldn't necessarily dictate the business model. I think business models are best for customers and best for developers when they best match the game. And so I worry a little bit when we think about a future where it's just a subscription that's dictated on developers. I think if you're not a game like Fortnite or PUBG that eats up a lot of people's time, it's hard to be economically viable in a subscription model. And there's lots of beautiful, wonderful indie games that take 6 hours to play, but that would have a hard time making money in a subscription-only world. And so for me, I think it's important to give game developers the space to match their business model to their game. Sometimes it's premium, sometimes it's free to play, sometimes it's season passes. Maybe in cloud gaming, it's something that we haven't even seen be invented yet. I spent a lot of time at Valve working on Team Fortress 2 hats and like Counter-Strike skins. And, game developers get really creative when they're given the freedom to explore and try new things. And so my hope is with any new platform that developers have that flexibility around their business model.
Thank you. So Matt, you've had a lot of writings on cloud gaming recently. You've commented on it a bunch on Twitter too. Do you have any thoughts that you want to add or, opposing viewpoints that you want to share? You're muted right now, by the way.
I think overall you can take a look at 3 different reasons to answer the question of why hasn't cloud gaming taken off. One could be the experience, which is it offering something that is unique, different, and much better than you can get today? And as Wada-san and JT have addressed, we have yet to see real content-based differentiation. As that comes and it's truly unique, you might see it take off, but until then, it's not as compelling an offering to those who do game today. You can also take a look at the cost argument. Many have argued that the cost of cloud gaming, especially when you no longer need to make a $200 to $600 upfront console purchase, can expand the market. And yet we're at the end of a cycle where there are more consoles in more homes than ever before. The average cost is lower than it's ever been before. And even though we take a look at how many people have purchased consoles, the number of people who have access to consoles is multiples more than that. If you have a console but your wife doesn't game, she still has access to a console. And so even that idea that this is reducing the entry-level cost is not as yet compelling. And then on top of that, when you take a look at the actual pricing models, you still need to purchase a $70 controller from Google. You have to purchase a $70 Google Chromecast Ultra. Then you need to pay $15 per month and then purchase games. And so even as yet, it's not clear that the cost advantage is quite there. And that's before dealing with issues such as the amount of broadband capacity you need to purchase, the speed you need to purchase. Then you can take a look at last elements, which is the idea of portability. It's not clear that the ability to play AAA games on the go is going to drive a long-term Xbox customer or a PlayStation customer to adopt Google Stadia, especially when it has fewer games today. And indeed, on top of that, Microsoft will launch its own cloud offering next year. PlayStation has had its own equivalent in Marketplace today. And so in fact, you can do many of the things that Google is offering today, but with a larger catalog. And indeed, Microsoft actually allows you, and Sony does as well, to play those games for free if you've purchased their hardware and the software previously. And so the last thing you could say is just, even despite those 3 things, why might Stadia not have lit up so far? The simplest answer would be, until they have something new or the cost is dramatically different or the use case is different, the biggest answer would be someone would nevertheless get a platform because it has truly unique, differentiated games. It may not be cloud specific. It could just be a traditional game that's only on Stadia, but as yet they don't have that. If they had their version of Halo that might not justify cloud-based gaming, but that would drive people to buy Stadia, and they don't have that yet.
Thank you. So playing off this for a moment, when we saw the initial reveals of Stadia and some of the other cloud gaming initiatives, one of the things that got people very excited was the opportunities around not just playing a game, but watching and interacting with that. Twitch has been pushing in extensions for years now. It's been long in the making, as JT well knows. And in fact, some of the earliest kind of showcases of this started on platforms like Twitch with Twitch Plays Pokemon. We've seen the Chinese streaming platforms push heavily into monetization models. So what does the future for interactive streaming look like? Putting aside playing with games over cloud gaming, for people who are watching and want to interact with content, where does that go? Is it about low latency? It is about deeper game integrations? And so, you know, we've been thinking a lot about what does it look like to create content where lots of people interact together? Is that coming now or later? And so again, to start, would love to throw this over to Wada-san and get his thinking, and then we'll open up to the rest of the panel.
Wada-san,
you'll need to unmute.
この点についてはGenvidの中で今まで散々議論されていたと思います。
So I mean, this subject's obviously been debated a lot within Genvid up until today.
で今私が新しい論点を言うというよりも、今回のコロナの影響っていうのをかなり楽観的に捉えているということを言いたいと思います。
And so rather than open up too much new, one of the things I want to put some focus on is the kind of tailwind that Corona, the current situation of Corona does to this sector.
これはインターネット、あるいはインターネットサービス、あるいはゲームに向き合う時間が非常に長くなりました。だから深く、今までやっていた人は深くゲームの中に入るようになりましたし、今まであまり接してない人もこういったタイプのもの、インタラクティブストリーミング、ライブストリーミングに接するようになりました。そのことによってユーザー側がトレーニングされていくきっかけができたと思っているんです。
So one of the things that is a byproduct of the current situation is that if you're no matter if you're an experienced player or viewer or not, the amount of time you have to consume this content or be in front of a screen for whether it's games or streaming or interactive live streaming is definitely increased, which means we've created an impetus for people to train themselves or to become more adept with the medium.
例えばこのビデオ会議なんかもこの1ヶ月ぐらい今まで使ったことない人も全員使うようになりましたよね。で、みんな使い方が上手になってます。というのはこれが普通の音声と映像だけであれば会議室で会議やっても変わらないんですけれども、チャットできますよね。こう会議しながら。これを上手に使うようになりました。これはビデオ会議が普及する前はですね、当たり前にあったんだけどみんな結構気づいてなかったんですよね。
And so, one of the things that's a good example of this is the type of video conferencing that we're all using right now, right? And everyone has pretty much learned how to use video conferencing in the last month, even those who'd never used it before. And one of the peculiarities of video conferencing that we have is not just the audio and the video, but also the chat. On the the right hand side or the side of the video, right? And the chat feature is something that's been around for as long as we can talk about, but it didn't really gain a lot of attention. Not everyone used it before.
つまりより深くサービスに接することによってユーザー側がトレーニングされますから、ユーザー側がトレーニングされた状態で我々がアイデアをぶつければ非常に浸透が深まってくると思います。今まではユーザーさんがなかなかトレーニングされてなかったのでですね、いろんなアイデアを出しても受け入れられなかったんですけれども、今まで議論してたアイデアっていうのが次々に花開いていくんじゃないかなというふうに楽観的に思っています。
And so this has been an opportunity for users or the audience to just kind of self-train and learn how to interface with the video that they're watching, right? And deepen their engagement with it and become more proactive. And because of that, they have a higher competency, and we can, utilize that higher competency to when we provide them some of the new experiences that we're working on. Up until now, we always had to worry about the fact that they may not have the competency to do it, and now we can take it proactively or as a positive that they have that ability to do so.
Thank you very much. So one of the things that's interesting about asking this question on the streaming platforms and where interactivity goes is that all the rest of our advisors here have their own unique experience within those. Anna at Caffeine, JT at Twitch, and Matt at Amazon Prime Video too. So starting with Anna, one of the focuses that they had at Caffeine, and one of the focuses for a lot of the game streaming platforms in general, has been reducing latency and focusing on those communication aspects. How do you think that improves or changes as we go throughout this next year or two?
Yeah, I think we're all getting a lot more comfortable with having conversations across a video screen with our friends and on streaming platforms with people that we love watching and that are entertaining. And at Caffeine, we spend a lot of time thinking about latency to facilitate that back and forth communication and to feel like you had a deeper connection with the person you were watching. It also allowed for the audience to all be in sync. And so the audience was having a conversation together and experiencing things together. And I do think that's important when you're thinking about a bunch of people doing something that's interactive and online. Like, we want to all feel like we're together. We want to have a social connection. And so I think all being in sync and having that experience together is important. The deeper it gets into the game, I think the better, because then we feel like not only are we spending time together, but we're actually interacting, engaging, playing something as a group. And I think that's a really compelling social experience that now that we've all spent so much time on video screens, we're all going to be looking for and looking forward to.
Thank you. And so on that note, I'll bring it over to JT too, because he spent a lot of time thinking about how to create interactivity into games at Twitch. And so would love your thoughts.
Yeah, I like the idea that we're in this space together, remotely and digitally, and there is a difference between where you are in what you see and what I see as far in with respects to latency, and so that it is important, and ultimately when taking it back to the original question on like live streaming, simultaneous actions en masse are actually difficult, right? So like I think that what's good for game developers is to actually start thinking about that and thinking about what are the design constraints that they have based on the fact that there will be some latency, and using that in the way that a poet uses, iambic pentameter or a rhyming scheme in order to create creativity out of it. I think actually we'll see more creative games pop out of that. Like with respects to what you were talking about with Twitch Plays Pokemon, it shows that mass groups can interact and create like super complex outcomes if you design a set of systems that allows that, right? Like there has to be some sort of input schematic that actually would make that possible. And so game designers should be focusing and thinking on like, what are those types of interactions that would allow the sort of interesting and novel outcomes that are important there. And then if we're talking about live streaming en masse to people, then you have to start thinking about the people mechanics behind these types of gameplay experiences, right? Like if your game is based on popularity and the world's largest streamer comes into your game, does that make them the most powerful person in your game by default? Is that what you want out of your game? Are there ways of maybe breaking up their viewership and the people that interact with them in order to kind of diffuse that and spread that out across the game? That's another like important design constraint that I think game developers should be thinking about when they're driving towards this future. And finally, like some games work in smaller groups, some in medium, and some in larger groups. And for any streaming platform, you're going to have smaller groups of people, like us in the Zoom chat, You might have a medium group of people, a few hundred people, or you might have 10,000 people. How does your game interact with all of those pieces? And as an example of that, it makes me think of like Jackbox Games, which has a very good like local play group, right? Where you're together and like, it's like a Zoom call and a few people are playing with each other, but then they also receive external audience inputs and inject that into the game as well. And so that's like an example of how you could think about the social interactions there. And all of that being said, like there's unlimited possibilities and space in there if you just think about the design constraints properly and use it like a poet would use rhyme to actually create something completely new.
Thank you. So if we think about Matthew Ball's trajectory of the last few years, you started looking at content strategy, non-interactive at Amazon Prime Video, and you've steadily become more focused and interested in interactivity, just to what JT and Anna and Wada-san were speaking about. So all of these questions on where interactive live streaming are going seem to be right within your core thesis. Where do you think that this goes in the future, Matt?
I think the easiest way to think about this is kind of with reference to what's happened over the past 12 or 15 years in traditional media, which is we have continually gone away from two different things. One is live content experiences. The second is shared or communal experiences. Those two things have actually essentially dominated every millennia of human existence up until maybe the last 50 years when we started really getting into television. And then at the point in which we got into on-demand television, we kind of departed from it almost entirely, at least for many of the major cultural moments. And yet the durability of that appeal over millennia is not just a reflection of technological constraints, it's a reflection of fundamental consumer preferences and experience. There are a number of different ways to look at that, one of which is when you go into a movie theater to watch a comedy, you laugh considerably more than when you watch a comedy at home with your partner. And when you watch a comedy at home by yourself, you rarely laugh at all. All of the sports fans in the world will spend hundreds of hours per year watching this content. Very, very few of them will watch any of that non-live. There's something about the suspense, about the knowability that's outside of the moment that does erode that experience. So there are countless examples that show how powerful that is. And yet what we've seen over the past 12 or 15 years is society moving away from that. And what that's a reflection of is the fact that traditional recorded media did not have a good reinvented version of itself for what was possible in the digital era. All of a sudden, when you didn't have to watch Grey's Anatomy at 9 p.m., you chose not to. And yet, even when we take a look at the shows that have survived and still done well over the past, however many years, The Bachelorette, Survivor, American Idol, that's because they still graft very strongly to that social experience, to that live suspense movement. And so if you take a step back, you say, what is capable of not just reproducing that sensibility, but really bringing it up to brand new and different things? That's the overall idea. Games, more than any other medium, can be two-directional and live and truly unscripted in a way that nothing else can. And then what JT was speaking to, as well as Wada-san and yourself, and really is the point of this call, is we've always thought about that as either being, you can kind of participate by cheering when someone scores a goal, by yelling something at Jeopardy, or participate by giving a call in on American Idol, and maybe you have an impact a day later. But the formats we're starting to see in interactivity, in video gaming, in interactive streaming, means that you can live, to enormous degrees, have a personal, individual, knowable, identifiable, consequential impact on that content. Nothing could be more exciting, not just because we know that it's very human, but because we know that that really matters to humans. And that's what makes this category intriguing. And in part, the reason why there are so many diverse opinions, not just on this call, but overall, is no one really knows what that content format looks like. To anyone from a strategic perspective, going after a problem where you haven't a clue what the answer is the most fun you can have.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. One of the hot topics in the interactive entertainment industry of the last year has been the metaverse, and thinking about where all of this interactivity, gaming, live streaming is going. In 2018 and 19, we thought we had a general sense of what that was going to look like. And then starting a few weeks ago, the world changed fairly drastically with the spread of the coronavirus. Right before this call, I was speaking with the CEO of a very large game studio, and he said 2020 is going to look very different when we look back on it, where gaming was before and where it's going afterward. So if we take our crystal ball and skip to the end of 2020, are we closer to the metaverse, further away? Has the definition changed? And so that's the next question that I would love for the panel to jump into. And we'll again start with Wada-san's perspective on the metaverse in the future.
メタバースっていう一種のビジネスモデルっていうのはどこかで定着すると思いますけど、あんまり今年進むという気はしないですね。まずテーマパークのようなものっていうふうに、メタバースをテーマパークのものっていうふうに考えるときに、そのテーマパークって何なんだという定義があんまりできてないと思ってます。
So in one way or another, we'll see the first kind of steps towards metaverse and metaverse compatible business models this year, but I don't think you'll see too much of progress, and there are a couple of reasons for that. And first, one of the things that I associate with metaverse is the idea of a theme park, and what still hasn't really been discussed a lot is what it means to be a theme park, what the components of a theme park are, and that whole definition.
例えばテーマパーク自体でものすごくいろんな遊びができるってことになると、それ自体はメタバースと呼ばなくてもただの巨大なゲームですよね。フォートナイトのような巨大なゲーム。で、きっと、すみません。
どうぞ。まだ行きますよ。
はい。ただの巨大なゲームってことになるんですけれども、メタバースと呼ぶんであれば、例えばディズニーランドの中で一つ一つのアトラクションに入る前のテーマパークの空間自体、つまり大きなロビーですよね。で、この大きなロビーっていうふうにメタバースを定義するんであれば、いろいろ考えは進んでいくんだと思います。
So if we think of a theme park as just an assortment or group of games or group of attractions, amusement attractions, that's not really the metaverse, right? That's just a big game, which is fine, but it's different. If we were to look at successful theme parks like Disneyland, what we have there isn't just all of those awesome amusement rides and attractions, but also these waiting spaces, these lobbies for people to gather. And that's a core function or feature of the design of those places.
だからこのロビーとしてのテーマパークをどう設計するかっていうのは、非常に難しいんです。今までゲームデザイナーってやったことがないので、あまりにも多くを盛り込むとゲームになってしまいますし、何もないとわざわざロビーにいる理由がありませんし、非常にバランスが難しいですね。
And so that lobby element is core to the theme park. Without it, it's not a theme park, right? And it's still a thing that game designers don't have a lot of experience with, because if they go too much towards the axis of play, it's not a theme park because it's a game. If they make it too not fun, then it's not fun. And so finding that balance is going to be a challenge for them going forward.
だから何でもできるっていう一種の身体性、体を持ってる、3D の体を持ってるっていうフィジカルな世界に近いものとシンボル、このどこにバランスを取るかっていうところが定義できれば一気にいくでしょうけれども、まだあまり進まないんじゃないかなと思いますね。
And so, you've got, again, another set of diametrically opposed access points. One is, being able to replicate the body but allow you to have the full features and functions of that and let you do whatever you want. And then there's on the opposite side of that, just the symbol, just the basic representation of you there. And where we sit within that and how the experience is designed and wherever that is going to be, again, a challenge.
Thank you. So, Anna, when you were at Oculus, I think that there was a lot of thinking around presence and avatars and how that connects to it. I remember when Zuckerberg bought Oculus, he called it the next great computing platform. And so there was definitely a sense of metaverse and the future of computing as you were working on it. Do you have any thoughts on this statement about where the metaverse is going in 2020?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, so when I was in high school, I played a lot of Ultima Online, and I could never convince my parents that being at home in my room playing a video game was a social experience. But I would go into school the next day, and like my friends and I would talk about the adventures that we went on the night before, and we were making friendships with people around the world that we would never have met otherwise. Some of those friendships I still have today. And so I think before the whole corona situation happened, I think gamers had already kind of embraced that being online and using technology, you could create real social interaction and friendships and have a connection with people. And I think now we've all got locked in our house, and now we're searching for ways to connect to people, and we're going to technology. And so you have people of all generations doing things like Netflix watch parties or playing tabletop simulator on Steam, or just like getting on a Zoom call and having a happy hour together. And so, well, I don't know that we've like moved much forward in the metaverse in terms of figuring out what the technology piece is or what the actual like game or place it is we will all congregate. I think mentally we've all made this huge shift forward in a way that I don't think we would have been able to otherwise for this weird extreme situation where multi-generational groups of people have now embraced technology as a way to come together. And I think that is actually a really key core component for embracing the metaverse, whatever it may be in the future. So I think we have taken a really big step forward.
Matt, in your recent essays on COVID-19 and where gaming is going, you also expressed some similar thoughts. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to give your own impressions.
Yeah, I think Anna put it well. Ultimately, the metaverse is very far away from being realized in its fullest vision or even its partly completed version. And to that extent, there's very little that can be done to massively accelerate that trajectory. The biggest issues are not necessarily consumer willingness, but to some extent it's interoperability between different partners, different technology stacks, standards, some of the technology, as Anna's mentioning, that is required just to underpin basic capabilities is just not there and is nowhere near being solved. So those are outstanding challenges. At the same point, I think there are three things that are really important. One is the experiences that we were just discussing about spending your life online or time online, not killing a terrorist in Counter-Strike, not trying to get a mushroom in Mario, but just existing. Those have historically been have been stigmatized and not properly understood. This is a rapid process of destigmatization, where people are understanding this is a healthy thing to do, it is a fun thing to do, and that will drive an overall embrace of the capabilities required to build the metaverse. The other thing that's important here is we start to think about what this is going to tell various parties they need to do in the future, as we see that online existence is more important than ever, and this need is only going to grow over time. The pressures for closed ecosystems to find ways to party, to share their experiences, to talk to one another will only grow. We've seen over the past few years, those walled gardens such as Sony have already started crumbling faster than ever. Amazon is allowing in-app payments, or Apple is allowing in-app payments to go outside of iOS billing. This will drive a much faster acceleration of those existing trends, and they're ultimately key. And then the last thing is we just need to think of what this means for the ecosystem. There are going to be, as a result of coronavirus, far more startups that are going to receive funding that are going to start to build metaverse adjacent or metaverse-like products. Their ability to attract key talent to participate in virtual experiences will be higher than ever, and exclusively as a result of the virus. The ability to attract brands and advertisers to fund these experiences, to enable monetization of these experiences, all of these different elements that are required to not just drive effort and investment in the space, but to make it fruitful, are permanently changed as a result. And so we can still say that the metaverse is years and years away, but all of the inputs are now healthier, more fertile than we would have ever expected in 2020.
So as I try to prevent the cat from taking over the camera on this virtual panel and reflect upon the world we live in today, one of the biggest growths that we've seen over the last few weeks has been growths in live streaming services like Twitch and others. And we've also seen, real sports going and creating esport equivalents and broadcasting that on live streaming platforms too. So I'm curious, JT, how you think these efforts in changing the way in which we interact and create and generate content are going to be reflected on platforms, how that connects to the way in which we treat virtual worlds as we head toward the end of the year.
Well, I think that having everybody in there actually, starting to, form those authentic community connections that happen inside of live streaming experiences and having a larger number of people like engaging with that will have knock-on effects in the future. One, all of the social side of it, where it becomes destigmatized because everybody spends some time wandering around the internet looking at awesome things and are more open to accepting that awesome things. But two, like real communities have been formed. And for me, like the core of all live streaming is about that community feel, that community that you build together. There's some things around esports where it is more like event-based, but there's still the general community of people that care about that particular esport or can care about that particular, human physical sport. So as I see the rest of this year and then going forward is a destigmatization of that as an experience that someone would like to and want to have. And the fact that there's a larger participation base, plus all of the strong community connections that people who have found a new streamer that they love and care about and a new community that they love and care about, that's not going to go away. And so I think it pushes maybe something that would have taken 2 or 3 years, kind of up into this year.
Thank you. So one of the topics that we got asked about was with regard to virtual goods. People were interested in our perspective on how virtual economies would change. Another question that we got from Twitter was about how 5G might accelerate that. I think that these were two of the topics that we thought thank you, Ken, I appreciate that, that we thought were going to be some of the main topics of 2020. This was supposed to be the year of 5G. We're all going to be going out there and trying all the latest and greatest. We were going to connect it to blockchain and have all of these virtual goods and virtual economies shifting the way in which we interacted. And that's not happening, right? We're staying at home. We're probably we're dealing with our pets, screaming as we're trying to do these live conferences. What changed in terms of what people's expectations were going to be for virtual economies, for connectivity, all of these plans that people had for 5G and how we were going to connect content to that? Where does this go? And we'll start with Wada-san's opinion.
ごめん、もう一遍、ちょっと日本語でお願いできます？ポイントが分からなかった。
Do you want me to translate, Jacob? My understanding of it?
Yeah, go ahead.
当初、今年は 5G が主な課題でして、いろいろ今年変わるという予定だったんですね。で、ビットコインというクリプトカレンシーも含めていろいろデジタル化されていて、で、オンラインのその市場化されるっていうふうにいろいろ見込みがあったんですけど、いろいろあって、用法が変わったでしょうし、その点について何か聞かせてくださいっていう。5G の時代とかっていろいろそれによって、経済が化けるし、いろいろコンテンツが化けるっていういろんなトレンドがあったんですよね。で、トレンドが走ってる途中でこのコロナも含めていろいろその経済的な休況に入ってて、で、なんか変わったんですよね。で、それについてどう思っていうようにちょっと私が理解してます。
経済の影響はあるんですけれども、だけどそれ以上にやはりユーザーの、行動が変わってくるので、それはどちらかというと我々にはポジティブに働いていると思います。まずそれが一つ目ですね。
Well, first of all, we can't minimize the economic effect. that the current situation has. But one of the positives one of the things that is positive that's come around is kind of the change in behavior that everyone's had to undergo because of the situation, and that is a positive for where we see interactive streaming and this industry going.
それから5G の件ですとか、ブロックチェーンの件ですとか、みんなそれぞれのバラバラに話してるからよくわかんなくなっちゃうんですよね。5G、IoT、AI、ブロックチェーン、全部一つの新しいシステムになるっていうことを前提に議論しないと、ものすごく変な話になっちゃうと思います。
So, when you talk about buzzwords like 5G and cryptocurrency, etc., everyone's always talking about those in singular units or in discrete terms. But what we need to think about is more systemic thinking. How 5G, IoT, and other terms, how they come together and create a new system that's holistic as opposed to in their subparts.
だからだんだん変わってくるんでしょうけども、今の世の中全体が新しいテクノロジーで変わるっていうことを見なきゃいけないんですけども、部品だけ見てるっていうのは、例えばブロックチェーンでですね、クリプトカレンシーのバブルのようなことをまたデジタルアイテムでやろうとしたりですね、あるいは 5G も、レイテンシーが低くなるってことだけにフォーカスしてみたり、いうことになるんですよ。全部がインテグレートされたときに何が起こるかっていうことを考えないと、期待しているようにならない、一体世の中は進んでるだろうかって疑問を持ち続けちゃうんだと思うんですよね。だから切り替えなきゃいけないと思います、考え方自体は。
So, I mean, we just do have to change the way we consider this and think about it. Again, if you think about just 5G, low latency, high throughput, what does that mean? And we think about that in a vacuum. We can see one future. If we look at blockchain and cryptocurrency, and we look at the digitalization of assets, taking that into an online economy, we'll get a different, again, singular view of history, where things are going. But in order to have any shot at having some sort of accurate perception of the future, we need to think about how these affect each other and how technology comes together to create these new opportunities, right? And without that, we have no shot of any kind of accuracy.
Thank you. So we'll go in order here in terms of everybody's thoughts. We'll start with Matt, then JT, and then Anna.
I think that was apt. It's very easy to say that when you're building something new, some new next generation internet or next generation internet protocol, to say that let's take a lesson from everything that came before it and let's start again and write everything anew. That's just not how these things work. You can't just scoot away every prior precedent, technology, capability, standard. And so when we take a look at all of these emergent technologies that are decentralizing computational power, that are saying there's new ways to store information, new latency capabilities, all of these are ultimately going to work together in one way, shape, or form. Just like when we take a look at anything today, whether that is a utility network in the real world or standards today, it's messy, it emerges organically, but ultimately it starts to coalesce around a shared vision that is sometimes driven by one party, sometimes driven by another party, sometimes driven by a collective or the users. What we're seeing right now is massive changes in terms of how quickly you can transfer data, how quickly you can transfer inputs and information, how you store that. All of these are going to be foundational to what the future starts to look like. It's all exciting, but certainly any position that says, here is the core technology and everything else is going to solve later, or this is the singular vision and we're going to push it through. There's not a single company on earth that is powerful enough, broad enough, or strong enough, no matter how crazily large they are, to be singular or dominant in that vision to that regard. When we take a look at even some of the most capable game engines, Unity has incredible market share, Epic has, or their Unreal Engine has enormous leverage. They're way too small to push any real standard today beyond what they've got in market.
Thank you. JT?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with both of those sentiments. And I probably go even further that I feel it's probably like fundamentally impossible to take all of those inputs and the combinatorial output of that, and for any one entity to actually like fully own and control all of the knock-on effects there. We should look at it holistically and try to make our best guesses, but like these will always be guesses, and we should be comfortable with that that world where we try to find a future and push towards it to make it better, and as opposed to like something a little more top down and commandy, being like this technology will be the thing that pushes us forward. On 5G specifically, I think that having better connectivity for every human being will just pour more humans into this and make it even more complicated and more awesome. So I think that it's definitely one of those technologies that will act as an accelerant. It will act as a catalyst. So I think it's important in that respect, but I don't think there's like any particular one answer.
Thanks. And Anna?
Yeah, I think for pretty much everything we've talked about, maybe less so 5G, but blockchain, interactive video, cloud gaming, all of those things. I think the real thing that pushes any of them forward is the content. Like I see all of them as tools for content creators to do awesome things with. And to the extent that the platforms enable game developers with time and with hardware and with money to invest in inventing what the best use of that technology is, that is the thing I think that will inevitably drive it forward. That was true with VR. Like we had to give game developers time to experiment and fail and try crazy things that we never would have thought of. And now you see Half-Life Alyx shipping, and it's this beautiful, wonderful thing that could only exist in VR. I think that's true of all these other technologies. I think we just need to trust and invest in our awesome creative game developer friends, and they will create wonderful things we will all want to experience.
I am completely aligned with that. And I think that that's a great note to end this panel. So I'm very grateful to everybody's time. Thank you to Wada-san, to Anna, to JT, and to Matthew, and also to Chris. Would love to do this again sometime, but in the meantime, have a great rest of the day. And thank you to all who have been watching. Bye-bye.